Hi everyone, I'm Sam, the CEO of Relinks. Thanks a lot for joining us today. So I'm going to be speaking to our new advisor, Paul Maxin, to get his thoughts on how the recruitment industry is changing in response to COVID. Hi Paul.
Hi Sam, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Excited to do this.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
So, you're of course well known in the industry, but for those listening who don't know your background, would you mind telling us a bit about you and why / in what capacity you've joined the Relinks team?
Sure, happy to. Well, I've been in and around talent and talent acquisition for over 30 years. Yeah, I'm that old, longer than several life sentences, really. Like many, I started in recruitment consultancy, but moved in-house about 22 years ago. In recent times, I was the global resourcing director at Unilever for 7 years, head of talent and resourcing at the Financial Conduct Authority, which is the UK's primary financial regulator. And I set up on my own in 2016, set up Maxin Talent. And key gigs have been transformational ones at Zalando in Berlin for a year, and latterly a fantastic 2 and a bit years at Publicis Sapient, which is the end-to-end digital transformation pillar of the Publicis group. And kind of professionally, areas that I cover include the development of talent acquisition strategy, the building of capability globally, employer brand development and activation, and succession planning. And you and I met you and your co-founding partner, Dan, through an introduction by Bill Borman at Unleash in Paris last year. So I've joined, and happy to join, as an external advisor. I've found you an ambitious and down-to-earth team, and you've got something really valuable to offer the marketplace. I'm delighted to work with you.
Yeah, and we're really delighted to have you on board and help us achieve the goals that we have over the next few years, which is great. So you mentioned Bill, and Bill Borman's been involved with Relinks for a while now. You've known him for some time, I believe, since you were his head boy. Is it good to be teaming up with him on this? And have you worked on HR projects together in the past?
Yeah, Bill's a legend, isn't he? And he often reminds people that we were at school together. He was a couple of years younger than me. And in fact still is. Last year when we were in Paris for Unleash, he reminded me of a near disastrous time when I was supposed to be looking after him on a school trip about 40 years ago, but I digress, that's another story. Our paths didn't really cross again until about 11 or 12 years ago when he started up True, the purpose of which at the time, and continued to be, a breath of fresh air. He's amazing. And over the years, I've done a number of streams with him at True, including when I was at Zalando hosting True Berlin in Berlin. And we've done some webinars too. And we've been on the stage together many times over the course of the last decade or so. So it's great to be working in closer connection with Bill and with you guys too.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you both working together on this, given your history together as well. Great synergy there for us. So, moving on from us a bit to the recruitment industry more generally, it's been a very testing time over the last few months, and I'm keen to ask you a few questions about that. And the first one that I have on my list is, how do you think the recruitment market has changed in response to COVID over the last few months?
Wow. Well, it's been a testing time for every market. Recruitment's the bellwether for the economy, and what's happened since February this year is unprecedented, during our lifetimes, and probably for the last 80 years. In some ways, lockdown has turbocharged digital transformation over the last 14 weeks more rapidly than perhaps the last 14 years. And the lockdown legacy, as it were, is that working from home isn't going to go away. Many leaders are realizing now that that leading from home isn't the same as leading from the office. They need to refresh or reimagine their behaviors and attitudes. However, before leaders learn how to lead from home, they need to learn how to lead themselves. All of our assumptions are being challenged. How to think differently about communication, and find a more effective way to lead from home. I mean, there are already some good studies and books out there on this, and this applies to talent acquisition and HR leaders just as much as to anyone else. I was reading a book the other day by a guy called Tim Johns, Leading from Home, and that covers much of this. For all of us, remote or distributed work can be a giant leap forward. But what are we returning to? Open source certainly has become the expectation rather than exception. And I believe that smart organizations should be taking a real look at the full talent cycle, optimizing experience both of candidates and hiring managers, and investing where they can in data-led recruitment marketing. I was trying to find a quote, as Abe Lincoln said, you can't escape the responsibility of tomorrow by evading it today.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Paul. Thank you very much. In terms of sort of how the bounce back, if you like, how do you see the next few months playing out?
Yeah, well, I think we're all going to have a sort of a laser-like focus to working collaboratively, both intra and inter-organisation. How we'll do that will determine how successful we are in turning things around and bouncing back. But to do that, you've got to start by sort of asking and answering a few questions. What's the impact of burgeoning AI and machine learning on the workforce? We've got to think more practically about digital education and how to scale access, and what's the impact on screening and assessment. Yeah, there's a lot to think about in this sort of like drastically changing recruitment market at the moment. And with that in mind, in your opinion, what are the key priorities going to be for sort of TA HR teams, sort of considering this new world, if you like, over the next 6 to 12 months? Yeah, sure. Good question. Think about what you measure. Yeah, it's got to be outcome focused rather than output driven, and it's got to be outcome focused for business now, not then. So, for instance, posing a few things, why do we think of looking at the quality of hire through the lens of impact of hire? It's much more focused on business measures. For instance, they could be growth of the customer base, retention and satisfaction of customers, problem resolutions. Mature organizations should be judging recruiters by the impact over time to hire. Time to hire is more closely connected to cost saving, whereas impact is much more closely connected to the bottom line of the business. And then you can collect really valuable and objective insight around a quantifiable set of experiences. And through that, start considering transferable skills as well. So yeah, that's a really interesting perspective and way of looking at it. Certainly something that we find when we're speaking to TA teams when they're looking at sort of objectives for the year ahead. We hear a lot about sort of wanting to reduce time to hire, a lot about retention rates, but something that doesn't come up that much, and I completely agree with you, should come up more, is the impact that those employees are having. Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Business-driven business outcomes. Yeah. So as things change over the next 6
12 months. Do you think there are any growth areas to come out of this as we bounce back?
Hopefully. As I alluded to previously, though, collaboration is a key. The McKinsey term "war for talent" is just so last century. The socioeconomic potential of the power of many, leveraging talent pools through better skills alignment, the exchange of talent, cooperation between enterprise and entrepreneurial companies. How about companies thinking of themselves as talent academies that serve both their customers and their employees? And if taken collectively, competing companies can collectively succeed. It's a far more sustainable approach, which would lead to mutually assured success. The technology infrastructure exists to provide social, shared, and professional learning, which enables organizations to build continuous and growing relationships with talent, whether owned, outside, freelance, or nomad. And that's where I believe you guys, Real Links, have a really important role to play as part of that. Going back to that passé phrase, war for talent, the language and spirit of collaboration is far more likely to lead to successful outcomes than that of war. In the words of Darwin, in the long history of humankind and animal kind, those that have learned to collaborate and improvise most effectively have prevailed. And progressive organizations should collaborate with talent as opposed to fight over it.
Yeah, and it's been really interesting, particularly during this period, to see those talent exchanges come to the fore, and that happening quite a lot. And hopefully that's something that will remain, because I completely agree with you. It should play a bigger part, and collaboration is the way to go. So hopefully a trend that continues.
I hope so. And as I said, that's where I think you can have a role to play in that.
Absolutely. Which brings me nicely on to my next question, which is, what role do you think referrals and Real Links can play?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you've got the stats to show this. There a huge sort of bounce back from COVID is going to be through networks, and referrals are critical to that. You've got the stats, as I said. There are two challenges: process and reward. One of the key reasons employees disengage from referrals is it's simply not in their remit, and reward and recognition are key. It's not necessarily the what, but the how, tailoring rewards to what matters. Two major blockers to participation and longevity, and considering most bonuses at the moment are paid after joining or indeed successful probation, it could take up to a year before a referrer receives any recognition. So regarding you guys and the role that Real Links can play, and what I like about your way of operating is that you really demonstrate it's a key to recovery from COVID. You can, the way that you consult in partnership with your clients to define a tailored solution for recognition, the way you hold focus groups and hiring jams with employees to formulate a successful referral strategy means that it's tailored and bespoke, but at all times you combine social media, employee advocacy. You can create the business case with a lean strategy, do an employer brand SWOT analysis, and overall look at the rewards methodology. And the way you define with Real Links, which really brought me in, was the difference between a referral and a recommendation. That's absolutely key. I mean, I've seen how your findings show that in your research, 31% of people who'd referred someone in the past, 72% of those knew them well. So clearly, the majority of the referrals are occurring between people that know each other. The common perception of refer a friend, a recommendation, and that doesn't necessarily in and of its own doesn't maximize D&I or diversity. So the average person in that space, refer a friend, can probably think of 4 or 5 people. Yet we've all got massive networks full of much more diverse acquaintances. The average number of LinkedIn connections per person is around 400. I'd wager, I'm not a betting person, but I'd wager a hell of a lot more than that. People listening to this webinar have a lot more than 400 connections. So that's a huge gap. And with good or great communication, that's a lot of hard to reach candidates for hiring managers that can be accessed. Now, the problem is doing that manually would be a nightmare. So, your platform, and what I like about it is that it automatically matches employees' connections to open vacancies, allowing employees to make those introductions through their networks, such as on LinkedIn, Facebook, GitHub, email, etc., at the click of a button. And it's simple to use. The referrals are viewed both as introductions and recommendations, and that's a simple and efficient way for employees to manage those networks.
Yeah, really, really good description. I think the introduction, the recommendation piece, you're spot on. It makes such a difference. And every company that we work with so far, there's a disconnect there between what the TA teams want. They're essentially telling us they want both. They want introductions and recommendations. And the employee groups are telling us in the focus groups that they think that only recommendations are appropriate. And subsequently, they're only referring the 5 people that you mentioned a lot of the time. And it's about opening up that communication channel, and our platform allows them to do that. And also, when they make that referral, select what type of referral it is, which makes them feel a lot more comfortable about it. I think there's been a bit of a shift in terms of the number of applications. There's been a surge in applications, understandably, at the moment. And recruitment teams, we're hearing, are struggling to sort of process and deal with that increase. And what the matching piece is doing for them is sort of helping them to find relevant candidates. And that's been quite a key part of it. So just an interesting insight there. I was actually speaking to one of our clients yesterday about exactly that point.
Absolutely.
Moving on from referrals, an area that you and I have spent a long time talking about over the last little while is internal mobility. Something that we're building at the moment as a tool. But I'm keen to get your thoughts on how and why this will be important going forward.
Well, it's the yin and the yang with external referrals. So filling the right roles with the right capability in a transparent way develops people, brings external hiring into internal succession plans, and it's really important for development, particularly as organizations are rethinking how they deploy talent post-COVID. That transparency is really important. So, oftentimes whether you get to do exciting work depends on who you know rather than what you know. Being connected internally with the right people. But the experience that employees have had over the course of the last few months, whether they've been on furlough, whether they've been working at home online, whether unfortunately they've may well have lost their jobs, is absolutely key. But that experience is about filling the right roles with the right people and ensuring that as you reassess transferable skills and what skills are required in the post-COVID world, internal mobility is going to be absolutely key to that. But it's the partner of external referrals, and it ensures that for external referrals, you're also filling the right roles. As I said before, I like to express it as bringing external hiring into internal succession plans as a result. That's why we've been talking about it, and that's why I think it's important going forward.
So thanks a lot, Paul. It was really interesting to get your thoughts on why internal mobility will be important over the next while. That's certainly reflected by the conversations that we've had with our contacts in the industry. We've actually now got some dev partners on board, which is great because they'll be involved in the build and ensure that we essentially build something that works for the HR community. But the feedback that we're getting is this is a growing area, it is of growing importance, and internal mobility is going to be sort of one of those key priorities for HR teams over the next while, as it should be. I think you pointed out some really key reasons for it being important, and there are many more. So I think it's an exciting path to be on, and it's great that you're joining us to help us with that. So final question from me then, Paul. What do you predict lies ahead in terms of growth for Realinks, and could you elaborate a bit on how you'll be helping us going forward?
Okay, sure. Well, the first prediction is success. That's absolutely what I see in you, Dan, the Realinks platform, and why I want to be part of that. So I find you guys, agile, very much open to advice. From my perspective, having been around the block a few times, I bring an eye of both fast-growing companies and enterprise organizations, and can help into how that impacts on sales, product development, introducing some dev partners, and also suggestions from my experience around what the appropriate integrations are, and the overall user and candidate experience for HR and talent acquisition, and leadership development managers and hiring managers as well. I think you've got that at the heart of what you do, coupled with simplicity, and that's why I'm on this journey with you.
Yeah, no, it's been a busy start. Hasn't it, Paul? Essentially, to take
busy start's better than the alternative.
Yeah. No, but I think you're exactly right. It's pretty clear to me that if you look at the business having 4 key limbs, from a sales perspective, we are selling to your peers, and you have a unique insight into that, and the approach we take could be heavily influenced by the feedback that you have. So incredibly important there. And again, with marketing, our market positioning, we've got an exciting session coming up soon on revamping our site. And again, having your input there will be invaluable. Customer success, of course, as well. And then product development, already we're working hard on the internal mobility product together. So, it is a far-reaching advisory role and does hit every aspect of the business, which is fantastic for us and hopefully interesting for you. So
it's certainly interesting for me, and very enjoyable as well.
So that's a wrap from us today. Thank you very much for joining us. If you found that interesting and you want to hear more from Paul, please let me know, and I'll probably be able to persuade him to do another one. If you want to find out more about Realinks, please get in touch with me. The details will be at the bottom of this webinar. But yeah, speak soon. Thanks a lot. I'll let you say goodbye as well, Paul.
Okay, thanks very much, Sam. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.